Welcome to SpringLaw's Spring Forward Legal Updates webinar series. This series is designed to provide a comprehensive legal overview of key issues related to employment law and human rights in Ontario. SpringLaw is a virtual employment law firm advising on workplace legal issues for employers, employees, freelancers, and executives from a wide range of industries. We hope you enjoyed today's webinar and find it useful and informative. To reach our team, please visit us at springlaw.ca. And now to our presenters.
Good morning and welcome to SpringLaw's Spring Forward Legal Updates and our monthly webinar series. Today is the third of our 2020 webinar series, and our topic today is of course COVID related. It's turnover and government income relief in the modern workplace. If any of you saw my tweet an hour ago, I conceded that we're all sick of COVID information as well, but there's always something new to present. So here we are. My name is Lisa Stam. I'm one of the lawyers at SpringLaw, and presenting with me today is Hilary Page, another lawyer in our firm. We are a Canadian employment and contracts virtual law firm that focuses on helping clients with tech-savvy and innovative legal solutions. We've been virtual since the beginning 3 years ago and all work remotely. So in the course of all this, if you have any questions about about how to deal with this in the remote environment, feel free to ask us. If you're new to our legal community, welcome. We're delighted that you are joining us today. We certainly have had a very big uptake in numbers of people attending and reaching out to us during this business crisis, so we're very happy to help. In the GoToWebinar software, if you can just, if you want to get a copy of our slides, you just go to the handouts tab and pull it down from there. And then finally, afterwards, if you have any other questions or information that you're looking for, feel free to come to our website, springlaw.ca. We have an award-winning blog, which Hilary leads up, so I can brag about it since she's one of the main writers for our blog right now. We have a monthly newsletter, and we have a subscription program and the new innovative Pivot DIY program that we launched last week to help employers in this environment. So without further ado, let's get to it. We're going to talk today about, first of all, how to hire, layoff, and fire remote workers, which is everybody right now, or most people. We'll also talk about how to pivot your business in this business crisis, and then and pivot your workforce. I mean, obviously we're employment lawyers, so we'll focus on that piece. And then we're gonna just do an update and review of the different government relief sources that are available and options that are available to employers as of today. So who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. As our caveat, this is as of April 15, what we understand is the situation.
At 10:30 a.m.
Yes.
Because I think that good old Justin's going to be speaking at 11 and with an update. So
yeah, we should be moving these to noon so that we can have a real time up. We're trying.
Yeah.
Okay, Hilary.
Yeah, so first we'll just quickly cover how to hire, fire, lay off remotely. So it is obviously a little bit different not being able to interview candidates face to face. I'm sure a lot of businesses were already doing their recruiting online, so that's not something we're going to touch on. But once you get those resumes and decide who you want to interview, we do recommend that you interview by video. Just to get that sort of person-to-person experience, and also that you do more than one interview. So maybe have a couple people from your team interview the candidate at different times, just because there is maybe some nuance that we lose via video, probably not that much, but just to make sure that they weren't just having a bad day or tech problems or whatever. So we recommend you interview more than once and get set up so that documents can be signed virtually or remotely. So using tools like DocuSign, emailing the contract if you're going to hire, and just absolutely not forgetting the paperwork. I'm sure some of you have attended our webinars before where we hammer it in that you need to get that contract signed before the person starts work in order for it to be enforceable. So that remains important in the virtual environment, and it's just something you need to think about. And then, there's a little bit of extra logistical stuff, setting up the equipment that the person might need, and making sure that you've got the security in place and everything if they're going to be using their personal computer, for example. Considerations there about how to protect company data. So a couple of other considerations for sure. Terminating or laying off remote workers. We're seeing a lot of people having to do this now, which is a challenge, but we still, so if you were terminating in person, you would have a meeting. We still recommend that, or strongly advise, more than recommend. You don't just fire someone by email. You don't break up with someone by text, and you don't fire by email. So life lessons. So, set up a phone call or a video conference. Run your termination meeting just as you normally would. Explain, just that it's for business reasons or whatever. We don't recommend going too deeply into the why of the termination. And at this point, most reasons are going to be related to the COVID-related downturn. So that's pretty understandable, I think, for most employees. Prepare your documents ahead of time. So make sure that when you do terminate somebody, you've also had a lawyer prepare that termination letter and everything, so that that's ready to go. And we recommend that you email the letter to the employee right at the end of the meeting. So you talk to them, go over what you're offering in the termination package, and then follow up with an email. Similarly for a layoff, you're not going to have a termination letter, obviously, but if you do have a layoff letter, you would just follow up, sort of confirming what you've discussed in writing following the meeting. And I don't know if you have anything to add there, Lisa.
No, that covers it all. Okay. We're determined to keep to our 30-minute limit today, so I have instructions not to add on to every one of the slides.
I'll stop asking. All right, so over to you to how to pivot in a business crisis.
Okay, so let's move into the next topic here. We're as you can all imagine, and as every business is facing, a very, very big chunk of the conversations we've been having over the last month or so has been how to handle the situation, how to pivot in this environment, how to predict what's happening down the road, and what are the options. So, the last half of this presentation will walk through all the government relief options to consider. But some of the takeaways that we're getting from clients that we've been talking to all these small businesses that are really struggling with just surviving right now. One of the helpful exercises we're finding is to really sit back and see this as an opportunity. It's a terrible environment. It's, obviously we hope that everyone is healthy and safe, and that has to come first. But outside of that, as a business person, there could be a real opportunity here to just think about your team and resize the team for what the world needs right now. We've had lots of clients where they've had the same iteration of their business for many years, and the internet has since been invented, the online world has since been invented, the economy has really shifted to an online environment. So for many businesses, it's time to pivot anyways. So regardless of COVID. So, we did this exercise in our own firm, do some crystal balling, take a look at what you think the world in your industry is going to look like in 3, 6, 9, 12 months, and build out that team, that product, that service, and get ahead of it. So it's, obviously for the employees that we represent, they also have to go through their own journey of pivot, because maybe in their existing business, or their existing workplace, the job they're doing needs to be tweaked to be relevant to the new economy as well. I think the one thing that we can all be certain about is that when we come out of this business crisis, the world will look different. I have no idea what it will look like. I'm not pretending that we know that, but there'll be a much greater comfort with remote, but there'll also be a real desire to see each other. So we'll see exactly how this all lands. This is an opportunity. The next slide, where if you can flip, Hillary's driving today. So, one of the ways that we've tried to, Janice, I think you're behind the scenes. Can you hand control over to me? I think we've lost Hillary. Oh, I think we lost everyone. Okay, I am. Show my screen. Okay, here, let me do that then. So let me just double check my screen here to make sure that we're looking at the right screen. There we go. Okay. Let me pull out. Sorry, everybody. Let me just a little technicality here. Let me just pull up the right version of this so that you're seeing the full screen here. Sorry about this. I'll get this to here. Thank you for your patience. Here we are. Okay, so pivoting your workforce during COVID. So based on all the takeaways that we've had from from all the different employers that we've had, that we've been speaking with, obviously everyone is in serious financial crisis right now. There's certainly a handful of industries that are thriving right now. So, congratulations if you happen to be in one of those industries. But for the rest of especially the small business world out there, there's a real overwhelm of information that is out there. So what we've tried to do here to help small business is we launched this new product last week around a DIY self-serve type of option to help arm yourself with the information and resources to help you be more flexible in your business. So there's, of course, lots of great free information on the internet that I think people should start with, right? I mean, as a small business, there's lots of great resources out there. Accountants, lawyers, everybody is blogging away right now and really stepping up to provide a lot of information. So start there. And then, there are some resources like this that can help with laying out the options and provide a more cost effective. So when you're pivoting, taking a look at, what is the team that you need over the next period of time? And if you do need to make these hard business decisions about who to terminate or lay off, then we've provided a bunch of templates and some guides and checklists and information for you to be able to work your way through the different options available to you. So that's, I'm going to just skip through this to get to really the meat of what I know a lot of people are really looking for is the different government options available. Let me just check here. I want to keep an eye on any questions. So if you see me turning, I'm just looking if there's any questions. If anyone has any questions as we go along, feel free to pop it into the chat. And I'm happy to answer them as I go along. Without Hillary has dropped off, so some tech issue there. We can all give you a hand afterwards as well if I can't get to everything. So some big picture issue spotting when you are looking to pivot your workforce. Start by looking at any contracts that you have in place and really understand whether or not you have a contractual ability to make any changes. Very few contracts will give you the right to lay off, although I think when we come out of this COVID crisis, people are going to start adding that provision into contracts. But take a look at whether or not you have a changes provision in your contracts that allow you to make some changes to the employees, either to their job and description so that you can really pivot existing employees, maybe retool people. And then if you need to think about laying off and terminating, then thinking through what are the risks of this. So, if you're laying off a workforce, we've talked about this in our past session around the risks of constructive dismissal, and if you try to lay someone off without a contractual right to do so, are you inviting a constructive dismissal complaint or claim from that employee? And we're fully anticipating some new law to come out of this period. Employers are having to make the choice of either laying some people off temporarily or going bankrupt. So there's definitely some really, really tough business decisions that are being made. And so we don't know. We can't crystal ball what the court's going to do, but I can't help but think that there's going to be some level of compromise that's going to have to happen in order to deal with this very unprecedented situation. In terms of, and so take a look at one of our other videos about the constructive dismissal piece. We've spent a lot of time on that. Managing the risk. So when you're looking through pivoting your workforce and deciding whether you need to lay off or terminate some people, some of the risks to keep track of are, is this a person who has a very big termination provision in their contract, or is it an ESA type of provision? And then the other way to really help manage your risk is to really spend time on excellent communications with whatever employee or employees that you're looking to either lay off or terminate. So having, especially if you're a small employer, I've heard so many heartbreaking stories from small employer clients that know their employees very well, and they know their family. They know whether they just bought a house last year and they've got a big mortgage, or they've got a baby on the way. They know all these personal details, and so they know exactly what the financial situation of their employees are. And so managing the employer risk is often around just really having effective communications with people, doing this in as decent a way as possible. It's hard to make these really hard-nosed business decisions, but to the extent that emotion can be stripped out, it's always the better way to go about this. The other piece around managing the risk is to be really clear about, is this a layoff? Is this a termination? Do you anticipate that you want them to come back, without over-promising, because we just don't know what the environment's going to look like. Minimizing the impacts is really around sharing resources and information with any employees that are going to be impacted. Tell them about the CERB, which we'll talk about in a bit. Tell them about any other government relief funding that may exist. Help people, get those ROEs out and help them apply for the new program so that you can get that all out the door, and help them with a bit of a financial cushion if they are off for a period of time. What we're finding with, especially with the CERB, the Canadian Emergency Relief Benefit, the government really is trying to funnel people into that lineup for that benefit. So, and there's not a lot of questions asked. It's apparently not a terribly complicated process. And it's a way to get into that lineup and get the $2,000 in your hand right away. If there's any abuse of the system as we go along, I understand there's going to be some significant penalties, but this upfront period is about just getting money into the economy right away and trying to keep things afloat. So I think that will be a, in terms of minimizing the impact, help employees get onto benefits because they'll be able to get them relatively easily. So assuming they're employees, if they're an independent contract, that's another story, and we can talk about that perhaps on a one-on-one after. Okay, let me jump over to how to get the external funding relief. I see that Hillary's internet has gone down, so we have lost Hillary for the rest of the session. So I'll walk through this. She was going to take this section, but I'm happy to walk through it. And I also have a question. If actually, okay, I'll answer. It's a question about the CERB. Let me walk through this for a second first, and then I'll come back to this question. Okay, so here's a checklist of the overall path to consider right now. So the CERB, the Emergency Response Benefit, is basically the lineup for employees instead of EI right now. So, you know, if you're an employee, if you have some employees that you're going to help transition onto this, they would go down the CERB route right now. The Service Canada is just putting everyone in that lineup and just trying to get things done quickly. The queues or this, to be honest, we were debating internally what the official name of the acronym is going to be, but the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy is the new one that has come out, and I'll get to that. We've got the 10% wage subsidy, the extended work share program. So the work share program was already in place, but they've just extended how long that you can access that program. Different opportunities to defer your tax payments, your HST, that kind of thing as a business. And then finally, the Canada Emergency Business Account loan that is the other main new opportunity for employers. So here's just a bit of a checklist and summary. So let me start walking through them. The first one is for workers, and I think it's important to be aware of what your workers' benefits could be, because it allows for them to make their own payments. It allows for you to help push them onto their own program, so that you know, if you are having that difficult conversation of either laying off or terminating them, then it's very good to be able to give them the tools to have some sort of financial buffer and support for their family. So the CERB, it's up to $2,000 every 4 weeks for 16 weeks. It's just it's $500 a week. It's meant to be a very simple, quick solution to get some monetary relief into the hands of workers. It's covering the period back to March 15, and it's, you know, currently to October 3rd, but we'll just keep seeing what the how the economy is going to continue to progress. The eligibility, you need to be in Canada, at least 15 years old. You have to have stopped working because of COVID, have some sort of income in 2019, and be without income for at least 14 days and expect no income after. So it really is all tied to COVID. If, and we've had this question a couple times, if your employee quits because they're nervous around coming to work because of COVID, or they have other commitments that they need to get to because of COVID, it's not the same thing. They will not be eligible. They cannot quit their job. They need to stay with the job, but have it impacted because of this. If they were fired, I mean, this is about people who are either laid off or terminated. But just like regular employment law, if an employee quits, they're not entitled to anything. Okay, support for business. Let's move on to that. The CEWS, the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, is going to be something that it is intended to be a real buffer for employers to try and bring back employees and get people back into the workforce, and to help prevent the big loss of talent, and to just keep money flowing in the economy. So the nuts and bolts of this, it's a wage subsidy, a 75% wage subsidy up to 12 weeks. There are 3 different periods that you would apply for, and it would be specific to those periods, and you have to make a separate application for each of these 3 periods within this March 15 to June 6 timeline. It will go back to March 15. Let's see. It's a remuneration of a maximum up to $847 per week. Now, and it's based on their average pay. I mean, the details are all here. I'm not going to read this all off. What we're finding with the CEWS, and the big question is, you know, what's hard for small employers is this is a subsidy and a reimbursement afterwards, as opposed to a cash in your hand right now. So it'll be important for you to talk to your accountant to really understand how to keep floating until the subsidy kicks in for you. So certainly apply, get in line right away, speak to your accountant about what might be the best iteration of this. But I know that's the challenge we are hearing around the CEWS, is that it's not money in your pocket right away, like the CERB is designed to be. Who is eligible? Tax corporations, individuals, so self-employed, partnerships, not-for-profits, and registered charities. Here's the different criteria of the time periods. The initial the revenue, there has to have been a reduction in revenue of 15% in the earlier stage of COVID, and then 30% now, April 12th to June 6th, as compared to the same time period in 2019. So it'll be a month-by-month comparison. For businesses that are new, for example, they're going to have this alternate time period that you can look at. So on the website, the CRA website, this is a joint project between Service Canada and the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency. So on the website is all the information about this and how to apply. I have to say the government website information, they've had a pretty good copywriter, and a lot of it is fairly clear to read. It's just that we don't have all the details because this is all being created and developed as we go along. So it's definitely a learning curve for everybody: accountants, lawyers, small businesses. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip over this example, but you can pull down the slide deck and use this as further information. The other, so that's the cues. There's still a lot to learn and to figure out, where are some of the gaps in all of the money that is being poured into the economy right now. Here are some other government benefits to consider. So there's the temporary 10% wage subsidy, which is intended to be a 3-month measure, and it's if there's it's to allow a reduction in your payroll deductions to the CRA. The Work-Share program is a program that has existed for a while, and this is a program where if you have 2 employees or a group of employees that do a similar kind of job, so they cannot be the owner, they can't have, I think it was more than a 40% ownership stake in the company. If they have more than one employee that are doing the same kind of work, you can reduce each of those employees' work, have them continue to do their job, and then apply for the Work-Share program to help top up their salary. What's new with COVID is they've extended it for 76 weeks. So it used to be a much shorter period of time. So now it allows you to pull that out over a longer period of time. So that's another option to consider. Other options include deferring your tax payments. Income taxes and HST and GST are all being deferred, which is, it doesn't eliminate the liability, but it helps push it off a bit to get through this initial crunch. And then access to credit. So the Canada Emergency Business Account is probably also the new one that's getting a lot of ink spilt on exactly how to deal with this. So it's an interest-free loan of up to $10,000. If you repay the loan by December, end of 2022, then 25% of it will be forgiven. But it's for small businesses who have a payroll between 50 million and 1 million. And I can't say I completely understand that really narrow scope of payroll. It's clearly a very specific target of employer that they're trying to help. I really do anticipate that this will expand and either look a bit different or have some additional criteria that will allow openings up a little bit. If you're a small business with a payroll of less than 50,000, there's a real gap here. So if you have a part-time business or a seasonal business, it's quite possible that your payroll is less than 50,000. So that is a gap here that still needs to be addressed. We've just added some links in here around the Department of Finance and the different economic relief plans that they have in place. But these are the main buckets here. I have a question here. They're a private, so here's the question. We are a private company contracted to a public entity. Does that exclude us from the CEWS, the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Plan? I would say no. It's true that the public entity would not be eligible for this relief, but as a private entity, even if your contract is with a public company, if you are a private entity that has your own payroll and your own liabilities, your own systems, you know, it's intended to help you. So it's not really about the public entity. I think you'd be fine on this. I'm a lawyer, not an accountant, so my lawyerly disclaimer here is that for sure, consult with your financial advisors as well. But what we understand from around the queues right now is that it really is designed for people who, who have employees that need the subsidy that are not a public entity. So I think you should be okay on that one. Okay, big picture employer help. I know everyone's busy and we wanted to make sure we wrap this up within a half an hour. So I just want to go on to this one. If you have more questions, I know I haven't been able to get to all the questions, but feel free to email us afterwards. We're all hitting information overload for sure. There's lots to process every day. There's new stuff every day, and there's just so much new happening right now. I know our firm's accountant has been providing us with great regular updates on different accounting and CRA related information. So lean on your professional advisors and see what they're providing. It could be that they're maybe putting it on their website and not emailing you to tell you that. So because we're all so busy right now, so consult with them for sure. The big picture recommendation we're giving to our clients is just access what you can, and apply what you can, proceed as conservatively as you can. We're in for a long haul of a very deep economic crisis right now, and so even if your business is great right now, it's hard to say exactly what the trajectory will be over the next couple of months. Will your clients be in a distressed position and not able to pay the invoices, for example, or access your services? It's all very unpredictable. So we're telling small employers, just try and access whatever relief is available right away. We understand that the approach that the government has been taking is make things available, try and get money pumped into the economy ASAP, and really try and get things moving. And we will deal with the aftermath after. So, if I would definitely recommend against any abuse of the system, because I do understand how they're going to approach this is get the money into people's hands now, but be hard-nosed on penalties after. If you're squirreling away your money for your trip to Mexico, that's not the intention of this. It's to really help bridge people through this economic crisis. And then the other big picture for all employers out there is keep an eye on the updates, which I know everyone is doing. There still are gaps, for freelancers, self-employed, small businesses with under $50,000 payroll. There's still some gaps in there. The freelancers and self-employed have access to the CERB, but you can't have earned any money, and I'm expecting that to switch out, because it could be that 95% of your business has fallen away, but you still have one residual client that you can still work with, project that you can still finish up, and technically that would be bumping you out of qualifying for CERB. So I know that there's petitions going around the internet trying to not have this all or nothing kind of proposition. So we'll, the government's listening. We'll see if this starts to switch out a little bit. Okay, some takeaways, and let me just do a quick check of any questions here. Okay, so there's one here. What would you recommend, and or what are your thoughts on working notice for employees that you have to terminate due to economic issues? If an organization has to pay severance, you might as well have them work this period. What might be the risks of this type of approach? When we're on for an employer, our advice is that working notice is, whether we're representing an employee or an employer, working notice is a completely valid legal option, unless you have a contract that says otherwise, and usually that's never the case. It's, it's unless it specifies it has to be a lump sum payment. But certainly, and in the absence of any really narrow and unique language in a contract, working notice is a perfectly legitimate way of providing termination package. What all of the case law talks about is what is the notice that you need to give to employees, and you either provide it as notice or pay in lieu of notice. And so it's perfectly valid to provide working notice. Now, employees hate it in many circumstances because they just want their lump sum and to move on. In this economic environment, it's going to be really hard for people to find a new job. So it could be that remaining in a working notice situation is much more helpful to the employee to find a new role, for example, because being employed, people tend to think that you have a better chance of landing a new role if you're currently employed. We're really encouraging employers to consider working notice right now, in part because if you have employees that are revenue generators, let's say they're working on a project or they have some sort of hourly remuneration that you're able to bill out to a client, if you can help generate a little bit of revenue by keeping them on, it's better than zero. You can expect every employee will be less motivated than they were prior to all this, but working notice is a totally legitimate option to consider. So let's say you decide that 2 months is the right amount of notice to give someone. You would just give them 2 months of notice and say, today, as of April 15, I'm telling you that 2 months from today, June 15, your role will be eliminated. And you need to keep working during that time, but we will continue your salary, and that's your working notice. So make sure that you're paying out at least what the ESA requires. You'll want to, if you want some sort of release, you need to give a bit more than that. If it's, now that's for working notice. If you are a larger employer with at least a $2.5 million payroll, and the employee is at least a 5-year employee, so longer service, larger employer, then you've got what's called severance pay obligations under the Employment Standards Act, in addition to termination. And severance pay has to be in cash. You cannot do that as working notice. So that's just as a caveat for the bigger employers out there. But otherwise, working notice is totally fine. What are the risks of this approach? The main risk is that your employees will probably hate it. If people are, in a distressed economy, in a distressed business, we're all at home, and so it could be that they just really want to be done with it and focus at home, and not feel motivated. If it's been a very not smooth transition to a remote office, for example, that might be tricky. But at the end of the day, as an employer, I would say focus on how do you survive right now and get out on the other end, and working notice is definitely a legitimate option. Okay. One more question, and then I know that we need to wrap up here. If a company has already enforced salary reductions across the company, if then granted Qs, would that mean it's retroactive to March 15 and employees would be paid up to 100% for the last few weeks at the reduced salary? That's a hard question. These are the moments where it's nice if Hillary's on with me. So if it's already had salary reductions, this is a great example of when the government rolls out something like the emergency wage subsidy plan. It's impossible to contemplate every single iteration of what's happening out there already. So if salary reductions have already happened, if you have presented them as a permanent reduction, then arguably, then the 100% is 100% of what that reduction is. That would be the number that you would be focused on. If it's intended to be a very temporary thing, maybe a salary deferral, and you've really presented it that way, then it could be that you'd be able to have their full salary come all the way through, and then pile on or layer on the Qs as a way to help top that up to the original 100%, which I assume is the goal of most employers and certainly all employees. So at this point, that is a very specific question that I haven't run across what the answer is yet. But we're getting new information coming out all the time. So that's my way of saying I kind of know, but kind of don't know. So feel free to email me more after with some more specifics, and we can try and give you a hand on that one. Okay, some takeaways, big picture. Build your future team. Now is the time to pivot your workplace. Think of some of the opportunities. I think it was Obama's aide back in the 2008 crisis who said something, and I'm going to get the exact wording wrong, something like, don't let a crisis, the opportunities of a crisis go to waste. And what they meant is, good things can come out of it. People are open to change. There can be some positive things that could emerge out of a crisis. So, it is an opportunity to really pivot your team and think forward on what you want everything to look like. Understanding all of your entitlements and your employees' entitlements right now really is key to this. And yes, the hard part, but is key to figuring out exactly what all the options might be. The SERP for employees, gig workers, and self-employed remains a really key source of some funding into everyone's pocket. It's only $2,000 a month, but that, for some people, that's actually more than what they might have gotten anyway. So it's definitely a very viable option for many of your staff. And then stay tuned for more updates. We're updating all the time as we go along as well, to try and get the information out to everybody. But the SERB and the Qs, we really do expect that they will change and expand, because it is fairly narrow right now. And as the policymakers really keep getting the feedback about where these gaps are, there really is an attempt to try and fill these gaps. So I expect that some of this will start to pivot and update as we go along. Okay, if you have any other questions, please email them in. I know that I missed a few, and I apologize. We've had this tech issue this morning with Hillary's internet going down. They were cutting some trees down in her neighbor's lawn, so maybe the tree fell on the wires, who knows. Welcome to the world of remote working and all the challenges that exist. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact anybody on our team. We're happy to give you a hand. Come on over to our website, where we have a bunch of resources, including our new DIY kit that we're selling at just a flat fee of $450. So hopefully that's a way to help people just get all their resources in their hands for figuring out how to get through this crisis on their employment and employee front. And we have our monthly newsletter and our blog, so feel free to stay connected with us. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day, and please stay safe. Thank you.